If you keep saying to yourself, I need more discipline or I need more willpower to break free from binge eating, then you're wrong. I used to say this to myself, and it was the mindset and the thought process that actually held me back in my 3 years of struggling with this painful cycle. In this video, I want to share with you a new approach, the exact approach that helped me break free, find freedom around food, and actually make more progress towards the goals that I had for my body. Let's get into it. So I want to take you back to October 2021. And up until this point, I had started to take weight loss a little bit more seriously. So when I first started trying to lose weight, it wasn't that serious. And then a couple of years afterwards, I got fired from my first job out of university. And at that point is when I really started to try and track calories. I started going to the gym a little bit more consistently. And I started losing weight a lot more quickly than I ever had done before. And that is exactly the same time when this kind of restriction to overeating cycle started to occur in my life. And I'll explain why this happens in a moment. But a year later of having this cycle, I still wasn't happy with where I was at. And my family and I went to Corfu on a family holiday. My brother had a coach at the time. He'd been on a similar fitness journey. He'd been losing weight as well. And when he started his fitness journey, his aim and ambition was always to do a photo shoot, but he hadn't pulled the trigger yet. And so on this holiday, he'd been speaking to his coach. They check in with each other 3 times per week via email. And he made the decision that he was, for the next 4 months, going to basically dedicate his life to preparing for this photo shoot. If you don't know what a photo shoot is, it's basically a day or a few hours. You go to a gym, you oil yourself up, you spray tan yourself up, and you, in preparation for this shoot, you get super lean and you diet really hard for it. You do loads of cardio, you train really hard, you're super consistent with all these things in order to prepare your body for this occasion. And I was a little bit bigger than my brother at the time, so he was a little bit further ahead in his journey in terms of like getting to that lean muscular physique that we both wanted. And although I was a little bit behind, I thought, okay, if I'm really disciplined, I can maybe still do a shoot with him. And so I basically convinced myself that I'm going to get to the shoot, And as a result of that, I became the most disciplined that I'd ever been in my life with my nutrition and my training and my activity. I stopped going out. I cut a lot of social occasions out. I was waking up at 4 a.m. every single day. I didn't even eat the food that my mom was cooking at the time. Before, what I would do is I would eat my mom's food at night and include other bits with it to hit my protein target. But at this point, I was like, no, I'm just going to eat exactly what I want to eat so that I can hit my macros to the T. And you can understand here that this is starting to get a little bit obsessive because I'm now stopping myself from enjoying life and the wonderful cooking that my mom was doing and spending time with her friends just because I was so adamant that I wanted to hit my calorie target. And I'll explain why this mindset is a bit unhealthy in a second, and you might be experiencing it yourself. But what happened a couple months in, so I've been doing this for eight weeks, and what happened was I was getting really good positive reinforcement for the actions that I was taking. Like people would say, you're doing really well. And my family would be like, oh, you've lost so much weight, you're making so much progress. I then created this association between intense restriction and confidence. There's an amazing experiment in psychology done by a guy called Maslow that I want to share with you, which will explain what was going on here. So imagine you have a dog and every time that you bring food out, you ring a bell. Because the food comes out, the dog obviously salivates because the food is tasty and he's looking forward to it. And he's preparing himself for the food. Now what they found that happened was the dog learned to salivate at the ring of the bell even when there was no food coming out. So think about it. Dog is there, sitting there, ring a bell, he brings food, salivates, happens. After a few times of that happening, just because someone rang a bell, without the food needing to be there, the dog continued to salivate. And so the same thing happened with me where I learned to restrict, and that would allow me to lose weight, which would make me feel more confident. And so I would get excited about restriction. I would associate restriction with feeling more confident and making progress and all of these wonderful things. But what I didn't realize was happening at the time was that I was actually also depriving myself from the things that I wanted in life. Because throughout this whole time of restriction, although I was associating with all these positive things of more confidence and more kilos off the scale, and I was losing like a kilo a week at the time, so it was super low on calories. I was also missing out on a lot of fun that I think is important in life to be having, not all the time, of course. Having your mum's food, or socializing with others, or maybe going out for a dinner with your friends. And so what happened was that 2 months in, I went to a dinner party for my auntie's party, her 60th birthday party. And at this point, I go to the 60th birthday party and there's Indian food there, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna have to manage the situation, maybe have one plate, cool. And I did that whilst I was there. But the next thing that happened, when I look back, was me exhibiting this binge restrict cycle. The cupcakes come out, and there are these vanilla cupcakes from Tesco, and they come out, and I end up having not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, maybe 6 of these cupcakes. So many cupcakes that my auntie was like, oh, do you want to take some home? Because she's thinking, oh, this guy must love the cupcakes. Like, he's had so many. And I'm like, I didn't plan to have the cupcakes in my head. And in my head, I'm thinking, no, I'm going to be back on plan tomorrow. And I end up getting excited about going back on plan and restricting and planning the rest of my diet. And that is what happens when you restrict so much, is that you restrict so much that whenever you go the slightest bit off plan, you say to yourself, oh, I'm just going to make the most out of it. I have to make the most out of it because tomorrow I'm going to be restricting again and I'm going to be making all this progress. And okay, that one night the calories weren't awful and I still managed to continue to make progress. But what happens afterwards when I went on holiday? And a few weeks after that, what happened was the shoot actually got cancelled. I had to go to Kenya. This was for personal family reasons. And when I went to Kenya, obviously I had no control over the food that I had. Zero control. Like, the food was pretty unhealthy. And for a while, I literally took Huel, I took protein bars, I took protein shake, and I would just have that whilst everyone else was eating the food there. And I would try to stick on my plan. And I did that for a few weeks. And I thought I did well as to what my definition of well was. But then as soon as I couldn't stick to my plan, as soon as I had to go a little bit off track, I couldn't handle it. And I just completely binged back up. I completely ruined my diet or ruined my nutrition because I'd been so restrictive prior, because I'd been in a state of pure deprivation or psychological deprivation from basically saying to myself, okay, I'm going to do this for X amount of time, and then at the end of this, I'm just going to move on and then be able to live my free life. But that's not how it works. The diet actually doesn't end. And I think that is where people get it wrong, where they think that they need to be more disciplined in order to lose the weight and not binge. But the reason why they are binging is because they're restricting so hard and they're not treating their physique goals as a lifestyle change. And that was the realization I made when I realized that this endless cycle of restricting myself is the thing that's causing me to binge. And the thing is, with restriction, it's so hard to let go of it because you probably are in a situation where you really want to lose weight. I did. I really wanted to lose weight. It's a big insecurity of mine. I grew up overweight, teenager, one of 3 fat boys in my school, always feeling a little bit maybe inferior, not that confident, outwardly very loud, very confident, but inwardly quite insecure. And food became a comfort throughout my life. And so I took it away in order to feel this more confidence, but in the back of my head, I was always thinking, oh, I can do this for a bit and then I can go back to eating how I want. But that always ended up in me screwing it up at some point. And this got progressively worse throughout my time until I realized that actually the solution is not to be more disciplined or to be more restrictive and to have more willpower, but it's literally just to fix the relationship with food and let go of the need to lose weight and start to love your body and nourish your body with the foods that it needs. And oh my God, once you make that penny drop moment, once you realize that, everything changes because you actually end up improving your body more because you let go of the need to restrict. And that letting go of that need to restrict means that you don't end up binging because you say to yourself, look, I can eat whatever the hell I want. And when you say to yourself, I can eat what I want, how freeing is that? Okay, right now you might be sitting there and you might have maybe had a binge recently, or you might have been restricting recently, but the temptation to binge only becomes because of the over restriction prior to that binge. Because we're saying to ourselves, okay, we're gonna hold back for a while until we can enjoy these foods. But when you say that to yourself and you go slightly off plan, then you say to yourself, oh yeah, I'm just gonna make the most out of it. So if you want to stop binge eating, you have to realize that restriction is not the answer, and you have to let go of that. Because if you don't, you're gonna be stuck in this endless cycle of restricting and then binging. I hope that was helpful. Remember, become the person that you wanna be. Peace.